The moment Delroy Asante walked through the glass doors of Hartwell and Pennington Private Wealth Management, the receptionist didn't look up. That wasn't unusual. People get busy. Phones ring. Papers shuffle. But when she finally did look up, when her eyes landed on the man standing at the front desk in his worn gray jacket and scuffed work boots, carrying nothing but a battered leather portfolio, something shifted in her face. Not surprise, not welcome. Something closer to calculation. "Can I help you?" she said. The kind of "can I help you" that actually means, "Are you sure you're in the right building?" Delroy Asante smiled. He'd heard that tone before. He'd been hearing it his whole life. "I have a 10 o'clock, he said. She looked down at her screen, scrolled. Scrolled again. "And your name?" "Asante. Delroy Asante." She found it. You could tell by the way her finger stopped moving. But her expression didn't change. "Someone will be with you shortly. You can wait over there." She gestured toward a cluster of chairs near the window, far from the main desk, the kind of seating arrangement that said "hold on" without saying it out loud. Delroy didn't move right away. He glanced around the lobby. The marble floors, the oil paintings on the wall, the brass lettering above the elevator banks, and then he nodded slowly, the way a man nods when he's already decided something, already made peace with what he's about to see. He walked to the chairs. He sat down. He waited. If you've ever been made to wait in a room full of people who look nothing like you, you know what that particular kind of waiting feels like. It's not just time passing. It's something being said to you over and over in the language of glances and body language and the careful choreography of who gets helped first. Delroy had spent 53 years learning to read that language fluently. He didn't always like what it said, but he listened. Delroy Asante had grown up in Scarborough, Ontario, the youngest of 4 children born to Emmanuel and Gloria Asante, who had come from Accra in 1971 with 2 suitcases, a set of cooking pots, and a determination that their children would have every opportunity they had not. Emmanuel worked nights at a printing company for 11 years, before he saved enough to buy a small dry cleaning shop on Kingston Road. Gloria kept the books, raised the children, sang in the church choir every Sunday without exception, and never once let any of her kids believe the world owed them something it wasn't also prepared to take back. Delroy had been the serious one, the quiet one. While his brothers played basketball in the schoolyard, and his sister Adwoa filled notebooks with poetry, Delroy read. He read everything. Library books, cereal boxes, the financial pages of the Toronto Star that his father left on the kitchen table every morning. By 16, he was following the TSX. By 19, he had opened his first brokerage account with money saved from 2 summers of landscaping work. He hadn't gone to a prestigious school. He'd gone to Ryerson. York now, he still had to remind himself, on a partial scholarship, worked 30 hours a week at a grocery warehouse the entire 4 years, graduated with honors in business and finance, and taken a junior analyst position at a firm downtown that no longer existed. He'd been passed over for promotions twice in 4 years. Both times the position went to men younger than him, less experienced than him, who golfed with the right people on weekends, at the right clubs where Delroy had never been invited. So he left. He built something of his own. Slowly, carefully, over 22 years, he had built Asante Capital Group into one of the most quietly successful, mid-sized investment firms in the country. Quietly because Delroy had never been interested in being famous. He was interested in being right. And he had been right, more times than most people who knew his name, which, admittedly, was not a great number of people outside the industry would ever know. He didn't drive a flashy car. He lived in a house in East York that he'd owned for 18 years, that still had the same kitchen his wife Nadia had chosen when they moved in, because she'd chosen well, and he saw no reason to change something that worked. He dressed for comfort, not performance, and when he walked into a room that didn't know him, he often looked like precisely what people assumed he was. A man who had wandered in from somewhere else. That Tuesday morning at Hartwell and Pennington, Delroy had a 10 o'clock meeting with a senior portfolio manager named Bruce Whittaker, whose client, a 78-year-old retired judge named the Honorable Edmund Farrow, had expressed interest in moving a significant portion of his estate assets into a fund that Asante Capital managed. Delroy had been referred by Pharaoh's estate lawyer, a woman named Catherine Osi Corentima, who had worked with Asante Capital for a decade and trusted Delroy's judgment more than she trusted most of the polished men in towers downtown. The meeting was worth, potentially, $8 million in managed assets. Delroy knew this. He also knew that Bruce Whitaker did not yet know who was coming to take that meeting. He sat in the chair by the window and waited. He checked his watch once. He did not check his phone. He watched the lobby. At 10:17, a man came out of the elevator. Mid-40s, pinstriped suit. Confident in the way of a man who has never once been asked to wait in the chairs by the window. He spoke briefly to the receptionist, who gestured toward Delroy with a small, dismissive wave. The man in the pinstriped suit walked over. "Mr. Asante?" He said it the wrong way. Asante, like the perfume brand, and didn't extend his hand immediately. "I'm Bruce Whitaker. Sorry to keep you." He looked Delroy up and down in a single practice sweep that he probably thought was invisible. It wasn't. "Can I ask, are you here on behalf of Mr. Asante?" Or, "I am Mr. Asante," Delroy said. Quietly, pleasantly. Whitaker blinked. "Right, of course, sorry. I wasn't expecting." He stopped himself, perhaps aware that whatever he was about to say next was going to be difficult to explain away. "Well, come on up then." They rode the elevator in silence. Delroy watched the numbers climb. He thought about his father pressing shirts in a back room on Kingston Road. He thought about what Emmanuel Asante used to say when one of his children complained about being treated unfairly. "Don't waste your anger. Spend it wisely. Anger spent well is just energy with direction." Whitaker led him into a boardroom on the 14th floor. 3 other people were already seated, 2 junior associates and a woman who introduced herself as Harriet Ng, the firm's director of institutional partnerships. Harriet shook Delroy's hand with both of hers. She'd done her research, you could tell. She knew exactly who he was. The junior associates had not done their research. One of them, a young man who would later be identified in the incident report as Callum Greer, looked at Delroy when he entered, then looked at Whitaker, then back at Delroy, and said, in a voice that wasn't quite quiet enough, "Is he here to fix the projector?" Nobody laughed. The silence in the room was the kind that has weight. Delroy set his portfolio on the table. He pulled out a chair. He sat down. He looked at Callum Greer for a long moment, not with anger, not with hurt, just with a clear and steady attention. And then he said, "No." "Are you?" Harriet Ng made a sound that might have been a suppressed cough. Whitaker was looking at the ceiling. Callum Greer turned a remarkable shade of red. And Delroy opened his portfolio and began. Now, if this were a different kind of story, that boardroom scene would be where things went sideways. Where someone said the wrong thing one more time, or made one more assumption, and the meeting fell apart. But Delroy Asante hadn't built a 22-year firm by walking away from rooms that made him uncomfortable. He'd built it by being the most prepared person in every room he ever entered, and by making sure, always, quietly, without fanfare, that the work spoke louder than anything else. The presentation took 40 minutes. By the end of it, Whitaker had leaned forward in his chair. Harriet Ng had filled 2 pages of notes. The junior associates, including Callum Greer, were very still in the specific way of people who have just understood something they wish they'd understood earlier. Delroy closed his portfolio. "I'll have Catherine send over the full due diligence package by end of week," he said. "If the Honorable Pharaoh has questions he'd like answered directly, I'm available Thursday afternoon or any morning next week." Whitaker nodded. He was still adjusting. You could see it, the recalibration happening in real time. Yes, this is exactly what Edmund was looking for. "I have to be honest with you, Mr. Asante, I wasn't. I mean, when Catherine called." "I appreciate your time," Delroy said. He stood. He shook Harriet's hand, then Whitaker's, then each of the associates in turn, including Callum Greer, who shook his hand and couldn't meet his eyes. In the elevator going down, Delroy stood alone. He let out a long, slow breath. Not of relief, exactly, more like release. The kind of exhale you make when you've been holding yourself very straight for a very long time and you're finally in a space where you don't have to anymore. The lobby was quieter now. Mid-morning, the early rush gone. The receptionist was on the phone. She didn't look up as he crossed toward the doors. He was almost there when he heard it. Hey, he turned. A security guard. Large, late 30s. A man with the kind of broad shoulders that come from effort rather than genetics, wearing the gray uniform of the building's contracted security firm, was walking toward him with the particular pace of someone who has decided something. Not a request pace. An instruction pace. Can I see some ID? Delroy stopped. I'm sorry? Identification. You need to sign out at the desk if you were visiting a tenant. I came in through the front desk. I was signed in at 10 o'clock. That's not how it works. Visitors sign in and out. I need to see ID, and I need you to come back to the desk. There were other people in the lobby. A woman in a red coat waiting for an elevator. 2 men in their 30s talking near the doors. A courier dropping something at the front desk. Everyone had, in the specific way of people in public spaces who have sensed something about to happen, become very interested in something other than what was in front of them. Delroy looked at the guard's badge. Fenwick, K. Mr. Fenwick, he said. I signed in at 10 o'clock under the name Asante. You can confirm it at the desk. I'm going to need you to come with me right now. I'd prefer to speak to someone. What happened next took less than 4 seconds, and no one in the lobby would agree entirely on the sequence of it afterward. What is clear, what was captured on the building security footage, what was reviewed by the property management company's legal team, what was described in 7 separate written statements, is that K. Fenwick took hold of Delroy Asante's left arm, that Delroy did not respond aggressively or attempt to pull away, and that in the movement that followed, Delroy ended up on the lobby floor with Fenwick's knee against his back and the leather portfolio skidding across the marble. The woman in the red coat made a sound like she'd been struck. One of the 2 men near the doors took out his phone. You're done here, Fenwick said. His voice was tight, controlled, the voice of a man running on something other than reason. You're done. Delroy, face against the cold marble of the lobby floor, said nothing. That was the thing people would keep coming back to in the days that followed. Not the fall, not the knee, the silence. The absolute, deliberate, unshakable silence of a 53-year-old man who had been building something for 22 years and knew, perhaps better than anyone in that lobby, exactly how much everything in this moment was going to cost. And he was very, very good at calculating cost. And here's where you might want to hit that subscribe button, because what happens next? What Delroy did and didn't do in the 48 hours that followed is the part of this story that stays with you. He didn't call a lawyer that night. He called his wife. Nadia Asante listened to the whole thing without interrupting, which was not always her way. She was a woman who asked questions, good ones, the kind that opened things up rather than shutting them down. But she listened. And when Delroy finished, there was a long pause, and then she said, Did they hurt you? No, good. Another pause. What do you want to do? I want to sleep on it. Then sleep on it. He did. And in the morning, over coffee at the kitchen table, under the light his daughter had given them last Christmas, that neither of them had ever quite figured out how to dim properly, Delroy Asante made 3 phone calls. The first was to Catherine Osi Corantema, who had already heard. The man with the phone near the doors had posted the footage that same evening, and by morning it had been shared several thousand times, and who said, very quietly, Tell me what you need. The second was to a man named Renford Baptiste, who had been Delroy's accountant and one of his oldest friends for 27 years, who said, without preamble, I've been waiting for you to call. What are we doing? The third call was to Hartwell and Pennington's managing partner, a woman named Sylvia Marchand, who did not yet know that Delroy Asante existed. He introduced himself. He told her that he had been a guest of her firm the previous morning. He told her what had happened in the lobby, and then he told her, in the same calm and pleasant voice he had used the day before when he said, I am Mr. Asante, what he intended to do next. Sylvia Marchand was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Mr. Asante, I am deeply, deeply sorry. I'd like to meet with you today if that's possible. I'll be in touch, Delroy said. I have a few things to sort out first. What he was sorting out was this. Hartwell and Pennington occupied 3 floors of a building called Meridian Place, which was owned by a real estate holding company called Greystone Meridian Properties. Greystone Meridian had been undergoing a quiet ownership restructuring for the past 8 months, something that had not made significant news because the people involved preferred it that way. The security contract for Meridian Place, including the contracted firm whose uniform K. Fenwick had been wearing the previous morning, ran through Greystone Meridian. Asante Capital had been one of 3 investors in the private equity consortium that had, 6 weeks earlier, completed the acquisition of Greystone Meridian Properties. Delroy had not mentioned this to anyone at Hartwell and Pennington. He had not mentioned it to Bruce Whitaker, or Harriet Ng, or Callum Greer. He had not mentioned it to the receptionist, who pointed him to the chairs by the window. He had not mentioned it to Kay Fenwick. He hadn't mentioned it because it wasn't relevant. He'd come for a meeting about a client's estate assets. He hadn't come to announce himself. He'd come to do work. But it was relevant now. The property management company that oversaw Meridian Place was called Briarwood Group, and its director of operations was a man named Victor Achimpong, who received a call at 8:47 the next morning from a number he didn't recognize and who almost didn't pick up, and who, when he heard what Delroy had to say, asked him to hold for a moment and then did not say anything for an amount of time that the call log would later record as 14 seconds. 14 seconds is a long time to be silent on a phone. "Mr. Asante," Victor Achimpong said finally, "I need to make sure I'm understanding this correctly." "I think you are," Delroy said. "The man in the lobby footage." "Yes." Another silence, shorter this time. "I'll have someone call you within the hour." Someone called within 20 minutes. It was not a junior someone. What followed over the next 3 days was a process that moved with the particular speed of institutions who have suddenly realized they have done something very wrong to someone they should have treated very differently, which is, in Delroy's experience, the only thing that ever makes large institutions move quickly. He was not interested in spectacle. He was not interested in a press release or an apology video or a company-wide diversity training announcement. He had seen enough of those to know what they were worth. What he wanted was straightforward. He communicated it to Briarwood's director, to Hartwell and Pennington's managing partner, Sylvia Marchand, and to the contracted security company's regional manager, a woman named Anita Chowdhury, who drove to the meeting in a company car and sat across from Delroy and Catherine in a boardroom, and had the good sense to look ashamed. Kay Fenwick was suspended pending review. The security firm undertook a complete audit of training protocols. Hartwell and Pennington issued a formal written apology. Not a public one, a direct one, addressed to Delroy specifically, signed by Sylvia Marchand, and Whitaker and Harriet Ng came together to meet with him at an office of his choosing, which was his own office, where they sat in the chairs he pointed them to and answered the questions he asked. And Callum Greer, the young associate who had asked if Delroy was there to fix the projector, came separately, alone, unaccompanied by anyone from HR, not because he was required to, but because he'd asked to. He was 26 years old. He sat across from Delroy in the same chair his wife used when she came to have lunch with him on Fridays, and he said, "I don't have an explanation. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry, and that I've been thinking about it every day since it happened, and that I know sorry doesn't fix it, and that I'm going to spend a long time thinking about why my first thought was what it was." Delroy looked at him for a moment. The same long, clear, steady attention he'd given him in the boardroom. "Good," Delroy said. "That's the right place to start. The story might have ended there. In a different version of events, it would have. But there's one more piece, and it matters, so stay with this a little longer. The day after the lobby incident, the morning of those 3 phone calls, Delroy's daughter Simone, who was 29 and lived in Montreal, and had seen the footage on social media before her father had said a word to her about it, sent him a voice message that he listened to twice standing at the kitchen counter. She didn't yell. She didn't call for blood. She said, "Dad, I watched that video, and I need you to know. You were so calm. You were so calm, and I don't know how you do that. I don't think I could. I don't know if I should be able to. But I also know that you always told us that how we carry ourselves in the worst moments is the thing that people don't forget. And Dad, you were right. The whole internet saw that, and what they saw was you. Not what they did to you. You. He saved the message. He still has it. Because sometimes the story isn't just about the floor you get knocked to. It's about how you get up, and what you do next, and whether you do it in a way you can live with. Delroy Asante got up, and he did it in a way that cost him dignity in the moment and gave it back tenfold in every moment that came after. The meeting with the Honorable Edmund Pharaoh's estate was finalized the following month. $8 million in assets under management at Asante Capital Group. Harriet Ng sent a handwritten note. Even Whitaker sent an email. Awkward, overlong, trying too hard, but genuine in the way of people who have been genuinely rattled into something like reflection. And if you walked into the lobby of Meridian Place today, you would see the same marble floors, the same oil paintings, the same brass lettering above the elevator banks. The receptionist would look up when you came in. She would ask your name. She would confirm your appointment. And you would wait, if you needed to wait, in whatever chair you chose. Because sometimes the person in the worn gray jacket is the one who owns the building. And sometimes they don't need you to know that. They already know it themselves. If this story made you feel something, leave a comment below. What part hit you the hardest? And if you believe that character is what you do when nobody's watching, and dignity is what you keep when someone's trying to take it, subscribe to Heirloom Tales. We'll be here with another story worth your time.